Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Thank you.
Councilmember Mathey.
Here.
Councilmember Bolin.
Here.
Councilmember Mwambwe.
Here.
Councilmember Emig.
Present.
Councilmember Painter.
Here.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Here.
Councilmember Black.
Here.
Councilmember Crable.
Here.
Councilmember Bray.
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. We're going to move right along to recognitions and appointments. We don't really have anything from the previous meeting. We have public comment, and we're going to go ahead and start. I'll read these in groups of three. If you could please be as expeditious as possible. You have up to 3 minutes. If you want to speak to us and have an interaction and perhaps get answers or problems solved, regardless of whether or not they're on the agenda, you can come to the Mayor's Open House from 4:30 to 5:30 on Friday evenings before a regular City Council meeting. So we had one just this past Friday evening. And so if you want to just basically give us your opinion, that's what public comment is for. Angela Blissbridge, and then R.J. McCracken and Gary Lambert. You come forward. Thank you so much.
Hi. I'm coming back into the Bloomington area for the first time in 10 years. I grew up in this region. I've just purchased a home at the corner of Market and Roosevelt, which is an interesting area. It's an amazing house, but there's an empty lot right next to me that I'm asking the city to consider finding a way to put into my ownership because it has a habit of collecting a lot of things, including trash and weeds, and the city has to maintain this property. And there's areas that have been homeless, people that are gathering. The cops that are coming through recently are telling me this. And I needed to make a garage area and a driveway since the city's new sidewalk that got put in rendered my driveway inaccessible for my garage off of Market. So the lot I will take care of. I'm there. I've put a security system on this house. I'm here to try to bring that community up and I love the area, and I want to see some of the lesser favorable elements to start to diminish a bit. So.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So I need to know how to get a hold of that property.
Okay. Normally we don't comment, but just community development is probably the best place to start, but get in contact with me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is R.J. McCracken, and then Gary Lambert and Scott Steinley.
Mr. Mayor and council members. At the end of July, I had the pleasure and daunting task of combining my two jobs, working for Let's Party Rental and the Bistro, to create the second annual Pride Festival for downtown Bloomington. And I'm here to thank you for it because I think y'all and everyone else did a great job in helping. We had an estimated over 3,000 people in attendance, and for the second year in a row had 0 police or security incidents recorded. A daunting and I think impressive feat for our people here in town. I'm here to thank the city for its role. The city workers did an exemplary job setting up and tearing down for the festival. I'd like to thank the council members who were present, the ones who in particular helped out with the cleanup process, and the ones who donated their money and their time to help us out. And to you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for coming and saying such kind words, showing how far our community has come, and I think it was really, really well said. Today I'm a proud citizen, I'm a proud member of this community, and I'm proud to be here talking to you, thanking you. Once more, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, RJ. Gary Lambert, Scott Steinley, and Serena Fish.
Good evening. I see we have an executive session scheduled for this evening, and I know there are a number of minutes that are older than 10 years that, for whatever reason, the council has not seen fit to make available to the public. Anyway, you've got a lot of new members the last 2 or 4 years. Take a look at that. See if some of those can be made public, or perhaps even pick a number, 10 years, 15 years, that they automatically become public. I mean, that happens with our government and top secret and everything else. Bit of trivia. Got a recent gas bill. May have happened before. This is from NICOR. My municipal utility tax is greater than my natural gas cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Steinley and then Serena Fish.
Scott Stemling, Ward 5. My concern is with the streets, the storm inlets. There are places on the road that are so bad that I've got to slow down and almost crawl until I get to a place where the pavement is decent. I shouldn't have to do that. You know, if these roads would have been kept up all the time, we wouldn't be in crisis mode. And now you're running scared. On Friday, Terry, you should have gotten all the way around the table, but it magically ended when you decided it was time to have it up. I thought that, you know, by this being public comment on Monday, I was going to bring it up. And, you know, Terry, I am extremely, extremely, extremely disappointed in you. I really am. This is the city of Bloomington, not Illinois Wesleyan. Now, I know that may come as a real shocker to you, but it shouldn't. Okay, anything to get reelected, you'll do. The majority of the voters will do what you want to do. You appear to see nothing wrong with letting people into the country from Mexico because of you want to be popular with people. I've got a sister-in-law that was from Mexico. She earned her citizenship. Nobody gave it to her. And I think that's lousy on your part. I really do. And the council's part as well, because they've got to support everything you want. It's just like the school board versus the superintendent. The superintendent can make the recommendations, but the school board has to either pass or disapprove it. And that's basically what I've got to say. You know, these people, they come into the country, take the goods and services, they don't pay a dime, not a dime, in taxes. Ship them back to where they came from. It's not fair to the people that earned that citizenship to let the illegals into this country. Perfect example, Mount Vernon Drive. That used to be a decent area, a nice area. I'm so glad I'm out of that place now, I can't tell you. The police department could respond to this, but my understanding is they're on calls like 3 times a week. Not on patrol, on calls. And this came from somebody that used to live out in that area. Thank you.
Serena Fish.
I'm sorry. J.A. Hi, I'm Serena Fish, and I live at 909 Westwood, and I'm in Ward 6. I'm sorry, I'm back to being positive again. I'd like to thank Mr. Karsh and the city for the sidewalk and ramp replacement program, Phase 1. Extremely well done. They have finished pretty much all of Wood Street that needed to be replaced. The people that had Phase 1, I see they did not win the bid for Phase 2. However, I have to say, it was Wascon Company. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Extremely nice company. All of their employees, all up and down the road, went out of their way to, like, if there was a parking problem, to explain something, move something. Really well done. At the end of putting the sidewalk in, the last thing they did was come along, fill in the dirt, and plant grass seed. I can't tell you how impressed I was. Also, in the middle of that, George Coots, is that right? He is the superintendent of solid waste in the city. There were some problems with tenants who literally, I don't know what they took with them when they left, because it looked like the whole household was on the sidewalk, and it was actually in the way of some of this sidewalk replacement that was going on. And I called the Public Works Department. They gave me to George, and within 24 hours, the problem was solved. So again, I've said it before, if you go online, if you make the phone call, somehow, miraculously, it gets done. So my kudos, again, to city employees. The last thing is, I know Jim is looking for people. I'd like to bring to your attention, there is a new improvement, again, to the west side, and that is Dreams Are Possible, which is a new building at 1311 West Olive, and it's improving employment opportunities for women. They will be opening soon, and one of the things that they're doing is it's women helping women, and they are spending time training women for the trades. So there you go, Jim. There's all your new employees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Serena. Thanks for your positive notes. At this point, excuse me, we move to our consent agenda. Are there items that members of the council would like to have removed from the consent agenda? Alderman Craybill.
7D, Mr. Mayor.
7D. And I'll take these in order that they're brought. Alderman Black.
7J,
7J as in Jack.
as in Juliet.
Or many of the J's that are at this table. Okay.
7H.
Excuse me. Let me just. Okay. 7H. Black and Creel. It's H, right? Right. Others. Alderwoman Painter.
7C.
7C. Okay. Painter. And 7, oh, excuse me, 7. Council member Emick, I'm sorry.
7D.
7D, okay. We already have D, but I will put you down as a co-puller, whatever that is. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. And 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, is there a motion then to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exceptions of, and this is in the order that they were pulled, 7D by Craybill and Emig, 7J by Councilmember Black, 7H by Councilmember Carrillo, and 7C by Councilmember Painter.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Carrillo. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Crable. If everyone will go ahead and vote, again, this is with those 4 exceptions. Oh, I'm sorry, rather than playing, could you showing on display, I pressed clear. Could you please vote again? I apologize. I'll do it right this time. I'm educable. See, 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Okay, well, I'll take these again in the order in which they were pulled. Alderman Crable, 7D.
Yes. I had a resident, a professor, I believe at ISU, send an email out to council with regard to 7D and the, I'll just say, garbage trucks, and possibly going to electronic chassis or motors, and instead of the diesel ones that I think they're planning to replace. And so I had a few questions for Jim, if that'd be okay.
Jim, of course. Jim, if you'd come forward. Thank you so much, Jim. Given some of the others, you might not want to go too far.
Fair. Hey, thanks, Jim. And we talked about this today, and the email was with regard to potentially using electric, increasing gas mileage, decreasing maintenance costs, taking away the in essence any gasoline charge, and that it would pay for itself, I think, in 6 or 7 years. And I believe you've researched this issue to some degree in the past.
Thank you, Councilmember Crable, for starting off to say to some degree.
Yeah.
Yes, it was in March of 2018, whenever staff had this question before. We did provide a response. Professor Rao did bring this issue up previously. So our staff actually was already able to provide some research even coming up into today. Now, back then in 2018, the technology just did not seem to be there yet. It was one of those to where the expense of the equipment, it was hard to overcome. Some studies would say it was almost double the cost up front because it just, the technology of the batteries were not there yet. If looking at it today, this afternoon, at trade magazines and the like, still does seem debatable on how far on the cutting edge it is. It is being done in some areas, pilots. And so in general, what we tend to do is we like to keep an eye out on the technology, and when it becomes viable, we like to then look at it. It is currently staff's recommendation this year to continue forward with what we've been doing, with the caveat that we look at next year. We look at a white paper for next year and don't just automatically move forward with diesel. Maybe it'll be ready. The challenge with this type of equipment is just the payback. If it is another $350,000, which I am saying I don't know that number, but if it were double, it is a $350,000 piece of equipment, and it were double the cost, you have to make up $350,000 worth of gas. We spend about $22,000 a year per piece of equipment on gas. The math, at least as of right now, it wasn't adding up yet. But I think it's really important for us to not just assume that it'll always be that way. So it is important for us to stay abreast of technologies, keep on top of making sure what is the best practice out there. We are not seeing a flood. One of the things I was looking for, is there a flood of other communities that are jumping onto this? Are we missing the boat? It does not appear that that is the case yet. But again, I think that it would be staff's recommendation for council to approve this tonight, with us looking very intently again at it next year before we would take it to the council.
Quick follow-up. So how would you compare the research you've done so far with what you mentioned as a white paper? Would that just be more detailed type of research?
Yeah, a white paper, really, I deem that to be a significantly more in-depth study about not just the trade magazines, where do we see any sort of, it is a best practice. It is, if we thought that it was closer to being something that was viable, we would probably be recommending a white paper this year. As of yet, again, what we see is that Bloomington, in 2012, we started jumping into the business of automated trucks. 2014. So in 2012, we did recycling. 2014, we did garbage. We bought a lot of pieces of equipment at once. What you're seeing now is staff trying to say, we don't want to have a huge influx of equipment in 1 year. You're seeing 3 pieces of equipment purchased this year out of 14 pieces. And you're going to see next year 2 to 3 pieces, 2 to 3 pieces. We're going to start trying to spread the burden of that capital cost over multiple years. The positive aspect is that gives us opportunities to never miss, those changing technologies. So if by next year it's ready, we can then start making that transition. If it's not, we can look at it the following year.
Excuse me.
Thank you
Yes,
for doing the research. I appreciate it. In the future, could you provide the research for this avenue as a counter possibility to what you're recommending?
Absolutely, yes. And that would be, let me just say, that would be included in kind of attachment documents next year, is what we would anticipate to do.
Councilmember Peter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, okay.
Oh.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Yes, it's my turn. Yeah, I guess my question, and I shared this over email, but it's, what is the sense of urgency about making a decision tonight versus at the next council meeting? Recognizing that some preliminary research has happened, it does sound like, this was a conversation that started back in 2018 that got picked up again, and I don't know when the first you heard about it, but the first I heard about it was today. So personally, I could benefit from a little bit more time of meeting with Professor Rao and kind of studying what those avenues are, but perhaps you all have already been in that conversation for longer.
There's nothing urgent about tonight. We have the time, so that's important to say too. So we're not bringing something to you tonight that is a make or break. But what we are saying is that we had looked at it again about a year and a half ago, and we just had not seen enough change. But there's nothing pressing. It would just take staff time to be able to look at some of the latest information.
So then in that case, I would just propose that we push it back a little bit just to give us some time to consider other alternatives, if nothing else, for Professor Rao to meet with staff and some council members, whoever would be interested to see even down the road what the viability is and what are the type of things that we want to see as part of a white paper.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
A motion to a time certain?
I guess it was not. I wasn't thinking it was a motion.
I was nudging a little. 2 weeks, 4 weeks? Jim, does it matter? Pardon me?
It depends on how much research staff is really looking to do. I would recommend if this motion does pass, allow us 30 days. The first meeting in September would be the recommendation.
Yes, accepted.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? You'll have more time for debate after that, but is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Alderwoman Bray.
Thank you, Mayor. So I heard our Director of Public Works explain to us that the cost differential is significant at this juncture because this technology is not yet fully developed or been fully vetted in the community. So with that, in that respect, we've also adopted a procedure now of making capital improvements and purchasing equipment when needed so that we don't put it off and have to make big buys all at once. So while I'm sensitive to the idea that we want to follow the technology, we've been told for this year that the technology is not there yet and that the costs are extraordinarily higher because, again, it's not been developed enough to bring the cost down to make it viable for our community. So in that regard, I'm intending to make a motion that we proceed with the recommendation of staff in regard to this buy, and I'll make that after we vote, obviously, on your motion. But I think the timing on this is just not quite ready for us to go into deep research because already we have the research that tells us that this is not a viable economic path for us at this time. So that's the way I'm looking at this, and that's what I intend to do after we take a vote on this other motion.
Alderwoman, Councilmember Boland, and then Milawambwe.
Would it be appropriate to second Kim's motion?
Not at this
Not
point.
yet?
We would
Okay.
need to vote on the one that's on the floor. But if that fails, then we'd be looking for another one. Okay? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Sure.
I believe inside the packet, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a time frame on that order?
sometimes it's 60 days or 90 days for the order to expire with the price that's on it?
So we do have a Sourcewell bid, so we do have the ability. It is a nationally sourced bid, so we do have the time. And again, so tonight isn't time sensitive, so that's important to know.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, just a quick question for you as well. So in those 30 days that you would take, do you anticipate seeing something different, or?
It is difficult to stand before you and guarantee that I can find the exact results of something. All we were able to do this afternoon is do the best we could to find some semblance. Had things drastically changed in the last year and a half? Are we seeing a whole lot of other communities that are going to this right away? Are we missing the boat? Maybe staff is this is something we need to do. We didn't see that, and so that's why we said maybe the timing isn't right. But again, this is. We can do whatever research the council would like us to do.
I guess I would also be interested in knowing for those communities that have done it, what they're seeing. Is that what your research is going to include?
That would be what we would look at. We would try to look at what's the best information we could find. And again, you have to look at, how in-depth do we go? We can look at, of course, we want to look at what are the other communities that are piloting this? Where are they at in that process? And a lot of that's really just a policymaker decision. If that's the direction our council wants us to look at going, that's what we do as staff.
And if we were, let's say, to make a decision now, today, and say, okay, let's move forward, would that preclude continuing conversations with Professor Rao?
Excellent point. No, that would not preclude continuing. That's true. That's a great point. It wouldn't stop us from continuing those conversations because, again, the current recommendation from staff is that you make the decision tonight, and that doesn't stop you from making. This is just the first round of many rounds, and so we might find that there are other opportunities different, and it might not be. There's natural gas, there's electric, there's hybrid. There are other options out there that could be considered as well.
Alderman Matthey?
So just for the sake of clarity, what I heard you say is you said that at one point you had heard that the trucks might cost double, but you didn't have any idea if that was true right now or not.
Thank you. That is
so
correct.
There was just the way it was phrased, it could have lent analysis one way or the other. So right now you actually don't know how much they cost difference or what the price differential might be, because we haven't had time to look at anything. Is that correct?
I was basing the statement off of double based on 2 trade magazine research that was done that said it can be up to double. So we have not specifically priced 100% electric automated garbage collection equipment for the community.
Okay. That's all I want to hear, is that's an important distinction of how that was phrased. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and again, this motion is, if you would just briefly restate it. I'm sorry, Councilmember Carrillo.
Yeah, I move that we, is it table this?
Table to a
Yes.
time certain, which
Yes,
would be
table
1 month.
this for 30 days from now, or at the next council meeting.
The first meeting in September.
Yes, the first meeting in September.
That's correct with the seconder? Yes. Okay. So if we would all vote on that motion, if that motion were to carry, then of course that is the direction of the council. If that motion were not to carry, then we would be open to another motion. Okay. The motion carries 5-4. No dangling chads there, but 5-4. Bad joke. It's got to be really old to know that. Okay. Would you announce the nays, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Matthey, Councilmember Boland, Councilmember Milwambwe, and Councilmember Bray.
Great. Thank you very much. And you're clear, Jim and Tim? Okay. All right. Let's see. We move to the next item, which was pulled by Councilmember Black, 7J.
Thank you. This is just a question for Tim. I received a call from a business that's located on Mitsubishi right now and had some questions about the financial implications of the name change and if there's assistance that's set up. And during the conversation, I remember vaguely that Normal was talking about this as well. What's that going to look like from our end?
Actually,
we knew from the Rivian discussions with Town of Normal that Rivian, the company itself, would reimburse, the couple $100 or so that it would take to make some changes. And I actually had an opportunity, Jim Thomas, the vice president for Rivian, reached out to me by text today to say thank you to the mayor and the council for this item being considered tonight. He's probably actually watching the council meeting. But, and I had the opportunity to confirm that was, in fact, Rivian's position, and it is.
So am I understanding then more details to come for any businesses seeking to get reimbursement or take advantage of said program?
Call me,
Cool.
and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you. And with that, I'll make the motion that we approve as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Do I get, no.
Oh, I'm sorry, you had a question, a
Okay.
comment. Yeah.
Well, actually, I have a lot of comments to
Okay.
make about this, so please bear with me. The question I have is this really in the best interest of the city of Bloomington and the citizens and the region? It's an unfortunate precedent that streets have been named after companies, and I would like to see that come to an end. I don't support streets being named after businesses because companies come and go and streets stayed the same, or they stay. Rivian has two other operational entities, one in California and one in Michigan. I'm not sure there's any contractual plans for ancillary businesses locally. Rivian did not meet its incentive goal last year. They promised 100 or 1,000 employees over the next 10 years. Or yes, and that only means 100 per year. I believe that a name change of a major highway is free advertising. And bottom line for me is that to be a business-friendly community, we need to be equitable for all businesses. And I don't view this as being equitable. There are several vacant plots along that particular road that could be developed for infill, and I'm not sure that those a company X would want to come in and have their address be company Y. Let's see, what else? I also wonder what kind of message we're sending to other local businesses in sort of preferential treatment. And there are several small businesses that will have an unexpected expense to change their advertising or website because they use Mitsubishi Motorway to direct traffic off of 74. So I think that there's a problem that I was contacted by a small business, and it would cost him $5,000. And for a small business, that's a significant amount of money. I would like to move away from the precedent of naming companies or streets after companies.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments?
I don't disagree with you. All I would say is, in this case, our neighbors to the north sought out this, and I'd like to work with them in this case. It's not my personal preference either, but I certainly I respect Normal's leadership on this topic. But I think, given that we're going to be able to work with Tim and staff for some of those costs, that's satisfactory to me. I did make a motion. Do we need a second to continue the discussion?
Did we have a
Second.
second?
I have, well, okay. I have one more question. Will there be reimbursement to that company that has to spend $5,000 to change his advertising, or any other company for that matter?
We don't have a policy for that. If somebody feels that they're harmed, I don't know how in the world $5,000 could happen, but, I don't know. Do we have any policy?
No, not that I'm aware of. I shared what Vice President Jim Thomas had shared with Town of Normal and then confirmed with me today. It wasn't near that amount at all.
I'm not sure how we should handle this, if it's
No,
in fact an issue.
I was referring to this company that contacted me, that he's going to have to spend $5,000 to redo his website and advertising. So is the town of Normal or whoever, Rivian, are they going to reimburse those particular small businesses that would be affected by this change?
I have a really hard time understanding where a $5,000 total could possibly come from. I mean, I have a little experience with advertising, and I mean, changing a website and changing the line from Rivian to Mitsubishi should take somebody like 5 minutes at the most. I'm not arguing with them, I'm just saying that's a...
I'm just repeating what the gentleman told me.
I understand that. I'm just saying I don't even know how you get to that number. I'm not sure. That seems. I think maybe he should have some serious conversations with his web developer at that point.
Anyway, just as a FYI, it's pretty common throughout the entire United States to name streets after major investors. In fact, I stayed in Birmingham, Alabama, at State Farm Plaza in Birmingham, Alabama, at a motel that was linked to a fairly small distribution center that was State Farm. And that is part of what some people think is, pro-business. But Councilmember Painter.
Thank you. I, too, got a call from a business owner who has two businesses located on Mitsubishi Parkway that are in Bloomington, and he told me that it would cost $3,000 to $4,000 to redo his marketing stuff for both businesses. And while I don't have any problem with renaming this to Rivian Parkway, I do have a problem if when Normal decides to change the name of a street that runs through both Bloomington and Normal, that Bloomington gets on the hook for any kind of payouts for that change. So that's just my 2 cents. I think Normal should pay for all businesses that have expenses regarding this. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, at this point, if everyone will go ahead and vote, we have a motion on the floor.
Can you repeat the motion?
Approve as presented. Approve as presented. Okay. The motion carries 7-2. There are 2 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Bolin, Councilmember Carrillo.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's see. We move to the next item, item 7C, as in Charlie, and that I turn to Councilmember.
Was the next one.
Oh,
You can come back.
no, that's okay. 7-8, I said I was doing it in that order. Okay, I'm sorry. I skipped right over you. I apologize. 7H, as in Hernandez.
Yes, great. Thank you. So I, first of all, just want to thank fellow council members for allowing there to be more time to move conversations with constituents about this. And I'm speaking for myself, but, I've been doing a lot of thinking and have moved conversations with a lot of folks who feel that this is a project that promotes outward sprawl instead of investment in our inner core. For many folks on the west side feel that this is a really expensive project in the short term and also in the long term will be very costly to upkeep. And my sense is that, folks feel that they're not getting their fair share. And I have heard just from constituents who don't want to see this happen. So I'm going to honor the things that I have heard, and I'm going to vote against this proposal. And I would encourage everyone on the council to think about the long-term costs as well as the short-term, amount, which is, it's not small potatoes. It's pretty significant. And so I understand that there's been a lot of work that has gone into it and that it's something we've been talking about for 30 years. But, I will just reiterate what I said last time, which is that if it took 30 years to happen, it's possible that a reevaluation to how necessary it is in order. So.
Councilmember Bolin.
I move to accept as presented.
Okay. Is there a
I'll
second?
second
That
that
doesn't
motion.
stop us from having conversation. Second by Councilmember Bray. Further discussion? Okay. Seeing that there is a motion on the floor to present as accepted. If that were to fail, we could move to another motion. The motion carries 8-1. There's one nay to announce, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Okay. All right. Now we move. Excuse me. Oh, that's right. Sorry. Okay. To item 7C, Councilmember Painter.
Thank you. I would like to approve the slate on item 7C with the exception of John Corey and Guadalupe Diaz III for the Transportation Commission. My reasoning is that both John and Lupe have expressed that their first preference is to serve on other commissions. In Lupe's application, which was received on 9/22/17, he stated that he wanted to be placed on the Planning Commission. John stated on his application that we received on 10/17/18 that his first choice is to serve on the Connect Transit Board. The appointment of Ed Breitweiser will give the Transportation Commission a quorum so they can convene and work. I know of other people who have applied to the Transportation Commission in the past. I see that you hold these applications for quite a while. You might check and see who else really wants to serve on this commission and put them forward at the next meeting. If those applicants are no longer interested at this time, I know of a group of recently graduated nurses who want to serve on local boards and commissions to give back and help foster a healthy community. I believe one or two of them may be interested in serving on the Transportation Commission in order to ensure health and safety as people travel back and forth. I'll advise them to get their applications in quickly. John Corey has served on the Connect Transit Citizens Advisory Committee. He's an Air Force veteran who regularly rides the bus. He's exactly the kind of Connect Transit Board candidate the citizens are loudly clamoring for. He has a passion for Connect Transit, and there are 2 openings for Bloomington on the Connect Transit Board. Isaac Thorne even gave him a recommendation. John actually called me up about a month ago and told me that he really wants to be on the Connect Transit Board. I think we should allow him to have his first choice. Lupe Diaz stated in his application, and I quote, "I believe I'm qualified for this appointment is my desire to serve my community and our neighbors. I have spoke with many people in our community about our growth and the future of our city. In this role, I'll be able to serve my fellow citizen and assist with planning of our great city. You, Mayor Renner, were listed as a reference. I believe you should place Lupe on the board he first applied for and for which you gave him a reference. There is currently an opening on the Planning Commission. These people truly want to serve our community in the best ways possible. They have been in the queue a long time. I believe they should be allowed to serve where their passions lay. That is where they will flourish and do their best work for us. Please bring these 2 candidates back at our next meeting and place them where they truly want to serve. To that end, I would like to make a motion to approve the slate of candidates listed in Consent Agenda C with the exception of John Corey and Guadalupe Diaz III. Thank you."
Okay. Before we continue discussion, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Alderwoman Bray. And just to clarify, it is very often the case that people do not get their first choice, and very often, by the time the council gets the names of people, the work is mostly done. And that is the discussions, the vetting. In the case of Mr. Diaz, there were 2 members of the outgoing members, of the Transportation Committee that did meet with him, and that's a process of recruitment as well as giving information, trying to vet people as well. And so it is very often the case that people do not, in fact, I don't know if we've ever really gone through that, but at least as often as not, people do not get their first choice for a variety of reasons, especially in the middle of the year when there tend to be fewer options and when there are other people who have applied for other positions. And so it is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, and you're trying to push one and put somebody else into the other and someone else into, another slot. I don't recall how many months Mr. Corey is serving. Mr. Diaz's slot is 8 months. And so that's the remainder of it might be Michael O'Gorman's term. I forgot which one that is, but it's 8 months, so that there are obviously different straddled positions here. And so these are people that if they do not perform in the way that they want or they don't like it, they can move to something else. And that is something that I do tell people. You know, if you're on a board or commission and it's not what you thought it would be, this is not a death sentence. This is not something we're asking you to give your firstborn for. If you want to do something else, or if you want to go to another board, if there is a vacancy, we're happy to do that. The main thing in terms of advice and consent with the council is that as much as possible, not just possible, if someone has been a member of or a resident of the city of Bloomington, since I've been mayor, we have been able to find them a position someplace. And I think that's the main thing that I'm interested in. I certainly take, when somebody from the council recommends somebody, and I didn't even go back to see if Lupe Diaz might have put me down because he sat and met with me. I mean, we're of different political parties. We do not necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of things, but that's okay. People have different perspectives on a variety of different issues. But that's the situation with the two of them. The situation with Mr. Corey, I did explain to him I was not going to make any appointments to the Connect Transit Board until after the work group was finished and maybe digest some of their information. And then I wanted to coordinate with Mayor Kusa and Normal to see who he was going to appoint to ensure that we had as much diversity as possible in terms of people who rode the bus, had to ride the bus, as well as people who were of color. And so we're working on those two things, and I think we will have conversations once the work group is finished. And I did explain that to him, but I said there is a position on, you know, the transit authority. So that's the background to each of those, and kind of, you know, again, I could go into a little more detail on the web, but it is, you are kind of putting together jigsaw puzzles. By the time we get to the point where the council gets the names, the work has been done. And that doesn't mean that the council has to accept it. It just means that the work has been done. But, I'm sorry, excuse me, Council Member Bray, and then Council Member Cradle. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that look at the background and kind of behind the scenes. I've supported Councilwoman Painter in her motion because it's a common sense solution. Matching people to their skill sets, matching people with their passions, and I think that's what we'd like to do, and we'd like to tap volunteers where their interests lie, and at the same time looking at what would best serve our community through, again, what is their skill set. And I'm very encouraged by Mr. Corey's experience, broader experience, and we know that we're looking for some folks to serve on Connect Transit that can bring a broader perspective, have seen some other things in the world, and can bring that into the community, and we'll all benefit from that. So for that reason, I seconded the motion, and I plan to vote in favor of it.
Councilmember Crable.
I just want to know the procedure with regard to, if we approve this motion, then we have Mr. Corey, Mr. Diaz. So will they not be appointed unless somebody makes an additional motion?
If, let's say, if your proposal, if someone were to want to, if the council's pleasure was to approve this as presented, you would vote this down and then vote it as presented. If you wanted to propose to appoint everybody who is listed here with the exception of the two that were mentioned, then that would happen. That doesn't necessarily mean, obviously, that either of these two people would be appointed in the future. They would go back into a pool of other people who were interested in applying for Connect Transit and planning and other things that are out there. But anyway, I would certainly, we want this to be as collaborative rather than confrontational as possible.
And then I'll just ask one last question. Have Mr. Corey and Mr. Diaz, have you talked to them about the appointment? Are they okay with the current appointment?
They would not be on, I talked to them months ago, because these have both been in, we've been kind of, as you know, kind of in limbo with appointments for many months. And nobody comes in here without to the council without clear understanding of the role, of the responsibility, and that they say absolutely yes. Because we don't want to appoint somebody who doesn't want to serve. Right? I mean, they waste all of our time, if that makes sense. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to ask a similar question, Mr. Mayor, that perhaps if these individuals are aware that this is the board that they will be appointed on or the commission that they will be appointed on and they're willing to do so, and I do strongly agree that we should wait until the working group has finished its ruminations before we make any Connect Transit appointments. So if they believe that their skills will also be in service in this capacity, and you indicate that they understood that when you spoke with them, then I don't see why we can't support their appointment.
And again, just to clarify, regardless of these particular people, because I want to make it more about the process than the humans, is that if someone were to take this, and let's say, I'm just going to pick Mr. Diaz because it's an 8-month appointment, he doesn't even have to serve the 8 months, but if he serves 8 months and then, as he's finishing up saying, hey, I think I would like to move to, sometimes people change their mind, and that they realize once they've been inside city government a little bit that maybe planning isn't for them, but something else is, whatever. So sometimes those things do happen. And I'm just throwing that out. Alderman Milwaukee.
Sure. So I thought about this briefly, and initially I was kind of wondering, what's the issue? But then as I started thinking, I thought I was thinking specifically of Mr. Diaz, who works in the area of transportation, and not that I would question his integrity, but I'm actually just kind of wondering, and almost out loud, does this could this create an issue for the Transportation Commission and put them in a tough spot in terms of conflicts of interest and things like that?
He would have to recuse himself if there was anything.
But how often? Because what I do remember when I read the application, I do remember that he does work in the trucking industry, if I remember correctly, right? And I know at some point we had an item on the council, and I think I remember, Jim might remember this, but it was about the truck routes, going through White Place. Clinton, sorry. Yeah, Clinton. So that kind of made me think, because initially I wasn't thinking of that. Then I thought, well, is this the right place for him? Especially knowing what his preference is. That are we putting the commission in a difficult spot? By having him, it almost feels like having somebody who is in pharmaceuticals and working on USDA or stuff or something like that. But that's just kind of what went through my mind.
Yeah. Again, if something came up, and I think we've talked about this several times over the years, if something comes up and in fact, we had a human relations appointment where there was an employee at that person's organization who, there was a complaint being brought up, and that person just had to recuse themselves when that case was brought up. If you have a direct interest and an economic interest, then they have to recuse themselves.
Yeah.
If that were to occur, with a truck route like that, I mean, that's the only time I think I've seen a truck route, but things could happen. It is the problem if you've got people who are involved and have some background in an industry, they may very well have situations where they have to recuse themselves, or they feel like they should recuse themselves.
Yeah, and I almost feel like it's better once the person is out of the industry, because then they can bring their experience to bear. I think because like I said, my typical concern, is always with perception, right? The perception of how things look. Anyways, just didn't want to. I thought it might make the Transportation Commission's job a little harder. in that regard. That's just a
Alderman
thought
Massey?
there.
I'll just offer a counterpoint. I understand what you're saying, but for the Technology Commission, I went out and specifically asked people to apply for that because of their industry background and information and what they did right now. So there's always a possibility. Like, I get where you're coming from, but in other places, we're specifically seeking people out. For zoning, we specifically seek out attorneys that understand the law, that can understand how to read a legal contract and a framework. And so there's both sides, and I totally get where you're at, but there's another side to it. I just wanted to bring that up real quick.
Yeah, Councilmember Black.
Thank you. Yeah, I have no idea how I'm going to vote on this one. But I keep going back to this idea that makes me nervous of rejecting people who want to serve. And, I know that we just don't want to be a rubber stamp for folks, and I'm concerned, and Maboka talks about this often, kind of the perception, and if there's a chilling effect of don't apply for a council position because you might get voted down. But I also hear the concerns, and it's a brave new world and how we're going about some of these things in a more methodical way, which I think is good. So I guess my ultimate goal is to create an environment where people feel as though they add value by serving without having to come and be voted down for various reasons. But I also want to be cognizant that there are people who are going to have concerns, whether it be by policy, by experience, by political affiliation, and that voice needs to be heard through our votes. So I don't know if that helped anybody, but that's where I'm at.
Councilmember Pater.
Thank you. To speak to Scott's point, we're not rejecting people. We're really just wanting them to serve on the commissions and boards that they want to serve on, that they really want to serve on. And as far as waiting until the working group has ruminated all of this, I have spoken with several people who are in the working group, and they are extremely frustrated at this point. And they feel like they are not being heard and they are not being represented on the Connect Transit Board. And I feel very strongly that John Corey would be just the kind of person that they would be very grateful to have on the board. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. No, we do have a motion on the floor, and just to clarify, the motion does remove Mr. Corey and Mr. Diaz, and if that passes, it passes. If it doesn't pass, then we could have a motion to approve as presented. Okay. Thank you.
I'm confused.
Oh, okay. Oh, sure. Of course. Well, let me clarify that again. I didn't clarify that. I apologize. We have a motion on the floor that includes the approval of everybody except for Mr. Corey and Mr. Diaz. Okay.
Point of order, Mayor.
Yeah.
Can the Alderwoman making the motion state her motion?
That doesn't have to be a point of order, of course.
I would like to
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion to approve the slate of candidates listed in Consent Agenda C, with the exception of John Corey and Guadalupe Diaz III. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Does everybody understand? And also understand that whether somebody is appointed or not does not preclude them from applying again, right? Okay. All right. Okay. The motion carries 7-2. There are 2 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Black, Councilmember Crable.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. We move right along, and we are finished with our consent agenda, and we move on to our regular agenda, of which there are no items. So I move to the city manager's discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I've got 5 items listed on the board behind the mayor is the upcoming events over the course of the next couple of weeks. Second item, I just want to share, and many of us are well aware by attending, downtown events, the attendance is up. And this past weekend, Melissa Hahn was talking about how it was, barely enough space to walk during the farmers market. So kudos to all the residents and all those that attend the downtown events. Bloomington Police Department. Greg, I don't need you to come up here, but stand up for me. Chief Scott, Interim Chief Scott, and then we have Assistant Chief Dan Donath. We have former retired Chief Clay Wheeler, and we have former Chief Brendan Hefner, have all been a part of a credentialing that the Bloomington Police Department has just completed. We're going to wait for the formal press release and, the certificate presentation in front of council when that comes, but it's quite a task that the Bloomington Police Department's completed. So thanks, Chief. All right, next one. We have codification right across from me. Leslie has been city clerk for 4 short months, and she's accomplished in those months, along with a really solid team, this update and improvement to the city codes that we have. They're searchable. I strongly recommend anybody in the community to play around with the search engine that it's provided. And this is something that we've been talking about for years. Leslie grabbed a hold of this, got it done very quickly, and got it done cheaper than what it was anticipated to cost when we last had our bid. So kudos to Leslie and the clerk's office. And then next week, Committee of the Whole, we have 3 items. We've got regional planning that's going to present a transportation study, probably be about 10 or 15 minutes. And then we have Connect Transit that is going to make a presentation very similar, if not identical, to what they provided to Town of Normal about a month, maybe 2 months ago. And then the third item is going to be staff update, not a presentation, but just a quick staff update on the video gaming terminal moratorium that we anticipate will be an August 26th agenda item for council to consider. That's all I've got, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. I want to start out, as I possibly can, with thank yous, and thank you to City Manager Tim Gleason and our Parks and Rec Director. Is he here? Yeah, he's not. For the opening of Harmony Park, and to thank Councilmember Craybill, Councilmember Boca Milawambwe, Councilmember Painter, Councilmember Boland, and Bray for attending this. It was really heartwarming. It was a wonderful dedication, and it really had, as far as I could tell, by far the largest number of people who came out to see a park dedication, and to see kids of all different abilities play together was just really fantastic. I also want to thank Nora for bringing me water, and I appreciate that. Talk about going above and beyond the call of duty. And also the Moms Who Demand Action for their rally in downtown Bloomington last week. Other than that, members of the council.
Thank you, Mayor. I too noticed that we are having a lot of excitement and opportunities in the downtown, and our first Friday of August was the best attended that I have ever seen or recall in recent memory. Between the, I'm going to say it wrong, so Jamie, you correct me, beer, brats, and bags ornament.
Brats and bags.
Bags, beer, it starts with, okay, brats and bags, okay. Well, okay. It was greatly, all that was greatly enjoyed by many, including myself, and it was just an exciting time to be in. It's an exciting time to be in Bloomington and on the Bloomington City Council, and to be a citizen in Bloomington. So enjoy our community.
Thank you. Councilmember Craybill.
Thank you, Mayor. So last Wednesday, I went out to the Public Works Department and met up with Colleen Winterland, and she was giving out assignments for street work, and I got an assignment and got set up with Jason Kennedy and Chris Montenegro, so thank you all. And I was able to do some pothole patching. So I did some work on Oak Street, Ward 6, and then a little bit on Seville. I actually had a constituent, send me an email thanking me. He didn't know I was out there, and they were very kind. They gave me like a brush but I don't think they really needed me to do that. It was just, I feel like I was, yeah, exactly. So thank you very much. They do great work. You really realize, and now as I go over roads, I could say, hey, that we could use that there, you know. So it was very enlightening. So thank you.
I would encourage everyone to fill a pothole. So, Councilmember Carrillo.
I don't think I was on
I'm
stack next, but
I'm just going around the dais.
yeah, just wanted to thank everybody, all the residents, and two of my fellow council members who came out to and the mayor, who came out to the listening sessions around the State Farm building. I think in total we had around 50 or 60 people who came out and took time out of their day to let us know where they stand, and I certainly appreciate that kind of participation from folks in the community around an issue where folks have such differing opinions. And I was most proud of the fact that at the end of both meetings, it felt like we had built community, even if we didn't walk out of there agreeing 100% with one another. People got to know each other. People did a lot of small group activities, and I felt they went really well, even if I didn't come out with all the answers. The other thing is, I heard from Jan Turner, who mentioned that they could use some support with the Sunnyside Community Garden, that they are short on volunteers. So they are having an open house on September 6th from 4 to 6 p.m. So you can come and check out the Sunnyside Community Garden if you never have. They're amazing. They've donated hundreds of pounds of food to Home Sweet Home and the Veggie Oasis and and to Sunnyside residents directly. So I think this is a super important project for the community. I've been there many, many times, and so I would encourage anybody who's interested in gardening to come check it out and consider lending a hand.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Painter.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say that I attended the Cultural Fest on Saturday, and it was a great event. It was well attended, and it was great to see all the kids dancing and all the different booths up and everybody having fun. So thank you to the city for that. And secondly, I would like to announce that this Saturday, the Front Street Jazz Festival is coming up, and they will have 10 bands, and they will be doing exciting things all day long on Front Street. So everybody come on out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ewing.
I was also going to give a shout out to the Cultural Fest at Miller Park. I had to work, but I wish I could have been there. And the Front Street Fest is amazing. I went last year. It was incredible. I'm looking at the people who are responsible sitting right there. But also Brugula is coming up, and it's a great fundraiser for all of the nonprofits that have qualified to receive funds from that event. So there are many things to do in our community.
Alderman Milwaukee.
Thank you. I'm also looking forward to the Jazz Fest because I every year there's always something going on. I'm out of town or something like that. So this will be a wonderful opportunity. Really looking forward to it, especially for, a business that we know it was a little bit controversial, right, in the beginning. And here we are, you're right. 5-6 years later, thriving. I think it's wonderful. And I also want to say ditto about Harmony Park. I mean, it was just such a great feeling to be out there. Everything felt right. The weather, the sun was shining, lots of people. And again, like I always say, you have to go other places and see in different countries. Some people don't even have parks, They don't even know where they can go and play and run. But here we are. We have an accessible park where everybody can play together. I think that is wonderful, and this says a lot about the community, so we should all be proud of ourselves for doing things like this. Thank you.
Councilmember Boland.
Well, I would like to add to that I view it as a monument to parents' love. The parents just worked tirelessly for 2 years, and it just makes it visible to the community. And also, I think all of us were invited to Millennial Soccer Club out on 6 Points Road. So since it's close to where I live, I just popped over there, and I was really impressed. They have this huge field, 8 soccer whatever, I don't play soccer, 8 fields, okay. 8 soccer fields. They had a potluck dinner, which was really nice. And it's all privately funded. And it's run by volunteers, and it is youth-centered. They're very much focused on the kids learning values, the kids playing. They're not so much into competition. The young people that do develop really good talent move on, but they stay. The kids that just want to play stay there. And I was just really impressed with everybody that was there. So we have community out in the sprawl, too.
So, last but not least, I just wanted to say thank you to Public Works. I've gotten multiple comments this week on the amount of road work we've gotten done this year and how fast and how professional the crews have been for the complete resurfacing as well as the pothole repair. Thank you to Councilmember Craybill for sweeping up after everybody. I'm sure if I'd went, they would have given me the broom too, Jeff. So, but there's just a lot of positive comments about activity in the community, and I mean, we live in Illinois. There's never going to be a time that I foresee where there will not be potholes as long as we have freezing and thawing over and over again. And so all we can do is say this is our way of life and do the best that we can and plan and focus around that. And I really feel like in the period of time that I've been on council, we're making a lot of progress on that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, I'm going to be asking for us to go into executive session for a personnel matter. You are all welcome to wait for us. It is scheduled for about 30 minutes. We will come back into regular session and adjourn. You are certainly welcome to see us do that, but we will not be acting on anything. We will not be talking about anything other than adjourning. So at this point, I would like to give us, if we have a 5-minute break so that people can clear the room and some of us can maybe go to the bathroom. So we will meet here back, what time?
Motion? Do we need a motion? Terry, do we need a motion?
I'm just going to declare that we will meet in 5 minutes. 7:18, excuse me.
Yeah, your motion.
I do need a motion to adjourn for 5 minutes. I'll do that when we come back. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Right.
oh, yes.